Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 7, Episode 7, Worst Case Scenario. Before we begin though, as ever, please make sure you are watching the episode first through roosterteeth.com to support the show and the amazing people behind it. Also, apologies for this review dropping late. I'm now back home from my recent trip to England, but I needed a bit more time to recover from a lack of sleep and a pounding headache, so I hope you can forgive me. Also, thanks to a recent post from Kerry, we now know that RWBY will be having a week break for Christmas, meaning that there will be no episode on the 28th. Episode 9 will instead be the first RWBY chapter of 2020 when it releases on the 4th of January. Anyway, let's share some of your comments from the last review. And much like the episode itself, a lot of it was on some positive and negative emotions. On the concerned side of things, we have Claire Thurston, who wonders what human rights that Penny would have that might help or hinder her situation that she's found herself in. While Diver AMVs fears the incident following the kiss with Nora may solidify Ren's desire to shelve his emotions for the sake of focusing on the mission at hand. And to end this segment on a happy note, Nika-zan sums up most of our feelings on finally seeing said long overdue lip lock. As ever, please leave your comments down below for this episode and tune in next week to see if you get featured in the next review. So, last episode was quite eventful, to put it lightly. Now the villains have made their biggest mark in Atlas, the immediate fallout to come will help shape the remainder of the volume as players on either side of the kingdom's conflict makes their next move. With a lot of hostility and conflicted emotions at play, was this episode able to deliver more thrills amongst the backlash? Or did this chapter's title describe its quality as well? Let's find out. We open on a understandably heartbroken Penny. Not only is she being blamed for the attack at Robin's rally, the people of Mantle want her to be shut down as a result. And what isn't helping the mood of the citizens is Ironwood's latest act, as following the recent swarm of Grimm fueled by the riots, no public gatherings are allowed, and there's a strict curfew that has turned the city into a near ghost town, save for the military presence and a few stragglers who try and sneak through. I won't deny though, it is a bit of a shame that the episode starts after the Grimm attacks, meaning that we missed out on seeing the others during their nighttime fun before things turned sour. True, they wouldn't have been the most vital scenes for the overall narrative, so it's not a complete loss, but it still would have been cool to see Blake and Yang get a chance to cut loose from their woes with Team Funky, or see Weiss, Jean and Oscar have a positive moment together after having some bumpy interactions in their pasts. Speaking of positives, I love this shot with the doctored footage and Penny's stunned face shown behind a set of bars. Great visual there to sum up the reception towards the poor girl. Anyway, the new rules doesn't stop Robin and her happy huntresses from stealing resources from military vehicles, which allows us a chance to see some new semblances at work. May is shown as the one who can create an area of effect invisibility zone, while the recovered Fiona goes full Animal Crossing villager by sucking up the truck and its contents via her pocket collection power. Very cool semblances indeed, and it's good to see that Robin isn't the only individual in the group with skills that showcases why they would be Academy graduates. I just wish they had a better faction name. No, I'm still not over that. Also, thanks to Kaden Jensen, the voice of May, we got confirmation that May is Henry Marigold's cousin, and they are also RWBY's first on-screen transsexual character, something that is extra special since Kaden is also transsexual. Nice to see some welcome representation for an underrepresented group of people, especially when it comes to healthy inclusions and animated characters. Could it have been a bigger character? Sure. Could it have mattered more to the character's story or the main narrative? Of course. But that doesn't mean that this isn't a positive inclusion, when such things are so few and far between. And I, for one, am glad to see it. Moving on, and as you would imagine, Ironwood is getting heated over this latest headache. Not only does he have to deal with the accusations towards Penny, the recent murders, and Jacques getting on the council, now Robin's thievery means that the Amity project is stalled, since Robin has also convinced the military suppliers to not provide provisions until Mantle gets the repairs that it needs. What's concerning though is instead of discussing whether or not to accept Robin's demands, Ironwood is considering a far harsher response: martial law. For those of you not in the know on what this means, the military would take control over all matters in place of the government, implementing their own laws and justice system. Most civil rights, like free speech and protections from unreasonable searches, would be suspended, and anyone arrested may be detained indefinitely, even for normally minor offences. Obviously, having this happen to the already choking city of Mantle could be disastrous when people are barely getting by as is. Add to that the further strain that it would cause on the ongoing issues between Mantle and Atlas, and you're looking at a powder keg of trouble that Ironwood is seemingly okay to let potentially explode, so long as his plans to reconnect the world get back up and running, believing the needs of the many matter more than the needs of the few. Okay, I know I may be beating a dead horse by this point, but this is extremely foolish by Ironwood, since he made it clear in the past that part of his plans regarding revealing Salem depends on everyone in the kingdom, including Mantle, overcoming the panic that follows so they can unite as one. Very hard to do that when the general is actively putting more struggles onto the people that he knows is already suffering while he's saying that it's for the greater good. And Nora ain't having none of it, which makes perfect sense. She too had to live in poverty and barely survived by herself as a young kid before meeting Ren. Of course she would relate to the woes of those in Mantle. And as such, I totally buy into why the often chipper girl can't stand by anymore and watch others go through more strife, when she feels that there is a way to aid their conditions, not worsen them. And don't get me wrong, I know the general has his own struggles, and his position is definitely not a comfy one, with everything that he has to do to protect his kingdom. But he knows he's dropped the ball in keeping Mantle safe. He's aware that his actions aren't helping his public image, and that pushing Mantle into more turmoil won't fix these issues. But he's still considering it. And that's a worrisome situation when this is also playing into Salem's main tactic of causing division amongst her enemies. On the note of Salem, her loyal madman Tyrion finally gets a bit of backstory thanks to reports shared by Clover and Winter. Seemingly from Anima, Tyrion was a serial killer that escaped military custody when, as the report details, his transport was attacked by a larger than normal swarm of Grimm. Recordings from the attack even suggesting as well that Salem herself appeared at the scene. Sounds like Salem was interested in Tyrion, be it because of his skills or his inhumane actions, and Tyrion, finding this monstrous woman leading the Grimm beautiful, chose to devote himself to her. A simple enough origin for his ties to the Wicked Witch, which is actually fine by me. Not every allegiance needs to be super deep, and its simplicity works in this instance, since Tyrion is someone with such a base enjoyment for his vicious ways. Also, I have to point out the little Easter eggs in this report. First, there's F. Pickerel, a reference to Tyrion's inspiration, the Scorpion and the Frog, as Pickerel is a type of frog, and the huntsman had doubts over the safety of the transport, much like the original frog wasn't trusting of the scorpion that he carried, both frogs also dying as a result of their respective scorpions. Then there's T. Cornetto. the pilot of the ship that is confirmed to be a reference to the Cornetto trilogy of movies Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. It might even be the second reference to these films, with Ironwood repeating a Hot Fuzz quote about doing what he's doing for the greater good. Sadly, even with the heroes now knowing Tyrion is trying to frame Ironwood and cause division, the idea of revealing him to the public gets shot down since he's still on the run and very dangerous. They also can't tell the people about Amity Tower since that could become targeted by the enemy before it's ready to go, and they can't even reveal Salem yet because the military isn't prepared to fight off the panic-fueled Grimm. So basically, the only option that Ironwood is throwing out is focusing primarily on the tower. Beyond that, he wants Tyrion found and captured, and he'll only consider a deal with Robin to improve both sides' issues once she's in custody. Something that might not sit well with Clover, given this sideways glance to Crow. I'm really starting to think that these two were old allies during their academy days, and I'm curious to see how far Clover's loyalty will be tested if he's feeling unsure about his new orders. He does still comply with the general for the time being though, as does Winter, and also Ren. Yep, even after sharing a kiss with Nora last episode, it looks like the soft-spoken ninja is still focused on the mission above his emotions, which, considering we just saw Nora argue against Ironwood, puts these two in an interesting dilemma. And before I go any further, no, this isn't Neo in disguise. She can't mimic voices because she's a mute, and his hair isn't hiding Neo's heterochromia since she's never shown to have a fault like that in her illusions before. No, this is the real Ren, a guy who, ever since learning about their slim chances of beating Salem, is clearly laser focused on doing whatever he thinks he can to improve their odds, so he can protect those that matter, Nora included. I'm actually glad that this kiss didn't instantly wipe away Ren's concerns, because it wasn't a matter about whether or not Ren liked Nora. That much has been obvious for a while. But the matter was, Ren is so scared about possibly losing his life, plus losing Nora and his friends against a much stronger foe, that he's willing to bottle up everything else, including his feelings, to focus on whatever he can do to get stronger and stop Salem before he loses more people close to him. It's obviously going to cause more strain on his relationship with Nora after what just went down, and I'm eagerly awaiting the first chance that these two will get to talk about it. But for now, I do get why Ren is acting this way, sad and shocking as it may be. After that, we jump to a shipment truck with Blake and Yang stashed inside, waiting to ambush Robin, and the topic about telling Ironwood the truth comes up. Yang is still trusting Ruby's judgment, but believes that Ironwood deserves to know, with so much that he's putting on the line, while Blake has concerns about Ironwood's response based on his past overreactions. They both understand that this is a tough call to make when there's very few good choices available right now, and Blake speaks a mind about fearing how far they will have to go under the belief of doing the right thing, which leans into talking about having to take lives in this process, of course referring to these two killing Adam to survive. And though this discussion is brief, I think it's handled brilliantly. These two needed to talk about what they went through, especially Blake given her ties to Adam. But it's not as simple as saying that they just gotta sit down and vent it out. No, this is clearly a touchy subject, and a lot of weight they have to carry. You can't just rush that when they're still trying to wrap their heads around having to take a life. And you can tell by their expressions that both girls do wish it didn't have to come down to the result it did. It's a strong moment for the pair, backed by solid voice work and animation, plus the Trust Love instrumental in the background, which is a nice soft melody to help carry such weighty emotions. And the scene ends with these two deciding not to ambush someone that they know is trying to do some good, which we'll come back to later. For now, we switch focus to Pietro's lab. "Hi Maria, nice to see you again." And we see that Penny is resting after her long night. The good news is that her visuals from the rally are being extracted, so perhaps her innocence can be proven. But much like the footage from the Yang incident with Mercury at the Vital Festival, the public have already drawn out their own conclusions. It doesn't help that this was more of Atlas's own tech used against them, no thanks to the lack of upgraded security in the Mantle network. As for how the upgraded Atlas network got hacked, a few select people have access to it, most notably the Council and those overseeing the heating grid, which both can tie back to Jacques Schnee, something that Weiss is taking note of. Very cool to see more of Weiss slowly starting to connect the dots on her father's actions, and the moment that she calls him out on his heinous plans, I hope is super satisfying. But poor Pietro though. The dude's already had to be worked to the bone with the Amity project, and now Penny is being made a scapegoat with people wanting her shut down. And on a personal note, hearing Dave Fenner get emotional about his girl just brings up all kinds of Walking Dead feels. RWBY though suggests that if the worst does happen and Penny is shut down, there still could be the option of reactivating her once the matter is over. But it's more complicated than that, as we learn a little bit more about Penny's creation. When tasked with creating the next evolution in Atlas defense tech, Pietro took a more personal approach than his cohorts, wanting to create a protector with a soul, and lo and behold, he and his team were able to create an artificial aura. Sort of. Turns out, part of Penny's aura comes from Pietro himself, as we see his aura flash, notably with some gaps around his legs, thus explaining why Penny is the only one of a kind, why Pietro is disabled, and why he's also in very poor health, because with every time he has to build Penny, it takes more of his aura, and if he has to do it again, there's a very good chance that Pietro will die as a result. It's a big impact to this Penny matter, and it helps regain some of the dread over Penny possibly being destroyed again that was lost with her most recent rebuilding. Now we got reason to fear what could happen to Penny and to Pietro. But even if Penny doesn't get shut off or destroyed, there's still reason to fear for her safety, as Pietro's conveniently placed thumb moves away from his old photo to reveal that Watts was part of the Penny project. I wonder if this is where his disgraced history comes into play, like Watts tried to make his own version of Penny with less humane experiments after seeing that it was indeed possible through working with Pietro. Also, all those theories about Penny possibly getting hacked just got a massive shot in the arm, because the man who we know has access to the Atlas network thanks to Jacques could very well use his talents and understanding of Penny's creation to hack the Robo-Girl and turn her against Ironwood and her friends. Not only that, but if he was able to get some of the tech that helped create Penny, he could use his past knowledge of the project to maybe build more Pennies for Salem's forces, giving the Wicked Witch even more numbers to her already massive army. Back down in Mantle, and Blake and Yang's efforts to talk to Robin quickly flops as the thieves make a break for it, leading to a fast-paced chase into a nearby alleyway, which offers up our first taste of Robin's combat skills, outside of the opening. And not for nothing, she's quite impressive in this short little scuffle. She's agile enough to keep up with both Blake and Yang, her speed and strength is top quality, and her quick shifts between her dustless arrows and wristblade slashes makes for quite the sharp fighter. But the numbers game does put her on the ropes, which gives the Bumblebee girls another crack at talking things out, finally deciding to reveal the Amity project to Robin. And in another bit of excellent directing, Robin steps out of the darkness of her doubts and frustrations and into the light to discover the truth. Seriously, this episode has some of the best visual directing in this entire volume, and it needs due praise because of it. But to make sure that what she's being told is true, Robin asks for one of them to give her a hand. Turns out, Robin is a walking lie detector, being able to use link aura through someone's touch to tell if someone is telling the truth. To quote Yang, because I love me a good pun, handy semblance indeed. With the truth known about Amity Tower and Ironwood genuinely wanting to help people, Robin is confused and asks why the general is being so secretive. Sadly, there's no time to discuss the massive Salem topic before backup arrives, so for now, Blake and Yang ask that she trusts them, like they are trusting her with this info. Robin does leave with saying that she won't stop her actions till she knows the whole truth, but you have to reckon that this has opened her eyes just a little bit, and hopefully this will do some good in the future. It's another very strong scene in the end, with a fun little bit of action and great discussions being shared. Yes, it's a risky move by Blake and Yang to reveal such info without Ironwood's consent, but it is positive to see these two make their own judgments, rather than just letting Ironwood or even RWBY make the decisions for them, overtaking their own feelings on the matters at hand. I said back in episode 3 that it was good the others agreed in not telling Ironwood everything, with all of them being unsure about Ironwood's reactions. But at the same time, it's equally good to know that just because they're all on the same page doesn't stop some of the girls from having their own perspective and acting accordingly to the issues that they feel they can hopefully improve. I do fear what will happen if and when Ironwood finds out about this, especially if it coincides with learning about the other secrets. But these separate actions helps the cast remain their own entities, and not just a hive mind sharing the same thoughts just because they're in a team. And it's going to be exciting to see what Robin makes of all this. She now knows that Ironwood is trying to help people, and she knows now that there's others at play trying to instigate conflict between the two cities. But that doesn't stop her from doing whatever it takes to find out the truth, nor does it make up for where the general has done wrong to Mantle. Not everything is going to be suddenly hunky-dory, but depending on what comes next, there is an avenue now for Robin to help keep Atlas and Mantle safe when things do go belly up, which could be key should Ironwood go off the deep end. Speaking of the general, we suddenly find ourselves in the Atlas Vault with Ironwood and Oscar, the two visiting this place as another attempt to try and bring Ozpin out of his slump, but to no avail. But wow, I didn't expect to be seeing the vault so soon, and it's quite the striking visual. The mixture of floating rocks and the high-tech bridge perfectly sums up Atlas's fusion of dust and technology, and the cold blue lighting adds a mystical chill to the setting. I still think the Haven Vault is probably my personal favourite of the two, but the Atlas Vault definitely feels like the better representation of the kingdom. We also learn what the Staff of Creation can do, which is acting as an endless supply of energy, capable of lifting something like Atlas into the sky in place of gravity dust. In fact, turning Atlas into a floating city was an idea straight from Ozpin, and it inspired the Amity project. But there's a catch. You can only use the staff for one purpose, thus explaining why they can't float up the city and Amity Tower. And, naturally, if the staff is taken away from Atlas, well, what comes up must come down, if you catch my drift. And should my suspicions about Watts possibly stealing tech to make his own pennies comes true, I think we may have just found his replacement energy source. It is a tad obvious what this discussion is trying to establish before it likely becomes a thing, but what helps this bit of lore dump / foreshadowing is how it's presented. Ironwood isn't talking about this just so the show can drop the information on us. He's saying it because he hopes that talking about Ozpin's role in Atlas's past might bring him out of his absence. It's nicely handled exposition without it feeling janky, and it ties into Ironwood clearly wishing that Ozpin was here to help guide him through his conflicted situation. The standout star for the scene though might be Oscar, as the young farm boy challenges Ironwood's steadfast focus on the mission above all else by talking about not letting your humanity, your fears and hesitation control your life like it could do for the general. he's still scarred by his biggest failure in Vale, as shown with this powerful shot of the Black Queen virus fading into his vision. And Ironwood doesn't want to end up like Lionheart, a man frozen by his fear into cowardice and submission. But Oscar, while saying that he does trust Ironwood, also says that he has faith in others too, and that's where Ironwood needs to improve. He can't let his fear stop him from ever trusting others with more than just information. If he talks to those who can help him make a difference, it'll help Ironwood's struggles just as much as it would help their fight against Salem. Hot damn, the farm boy finally got a strong on-screen scene. He's been so desperate for something like this for a while now, and to see him balance being supportive and critical of the general shows how far Oscar's own maturity has come since the days of him being too lost and inexperienced to truly speak his mind. Like Ironwood says, he sounds a lot like Ozpin, but what makes him different to Ozpin is how earnest he feels. There's no mystery or intellectual words hiding some of his emotions, just based on his comments that he hopes is enough to help someone clearly in need of some support. This is stuff that Oscar really does need more of, as he is indeed to become this new Ozpin, a guiding voice and a protector in ways beyond just what he can do in combat, and I really did enjoy this moment. But wouldn't you know it, Jacques Cheny just can't let an episode get by without him causing up a stink, as the episode ends with Ironwood receiving a letter from the new council member inviting everyone to the Cheny Manor for a dinner, and for Ironwood's chance to defend his seat on the council. I smell something fishy here, and I'm not meaning anything on the dinner menu. This has all the makings of another setup concocted by Jock and Watts. It could be a straight up attack, or maybe Watts will have some kind of telegraphed communications to make it out like Ironwood and Jacques are having a celebratory meal after screwing over Mantle, and any footage from this get together shown to the public will cause further anger towards the people of Atlas. Also, this could be where we finally get to meet Mama Cheny for another low blow from Jacques towards his daughter, which means that family drama could be about to blow up big time, especially with Weiss's suspicions, and this being the first time we're gonna see Winter and Jacques in the same scene together. Either way, get ready folks, cause we're spending Christmas with the Chenys, and I'd be very shocked if we don't get another shocking Christmas cliffhanger, as per the norm in this series. But that's for the future. Let's wrap up my final thoughts on this episode, because this was quite the doozy. I've already put out a tweet saying this, but Volume 7 has all the makings of potentially becoming the best written volume in the series so far, with this episode being a prime example of the writing quality. The dialogue had very little fluff, with much of the discussion hitting all the strong emotional beats that were there at a steady and believable pace that felt perfectly timed to appear in this part of the narrative. Every character with a standout point of discussion is wonderfully woven into other characters' actions, creating this perfect web of different emotions, understandable conflictions, and thrilling new edges to the cast, like how Nora and Ren's different stances on Ironwood's orders gives their relationship something exciting to provide them with a new hurdle to overcome, while Yang and Blake's actions help them flesh out some of their inner thoughts on the Adam topic, whilst creating a new wrinkle in Robin's conflict with those that she's seeking answers from. Every differing viewpoint and emotion is interwoven so smoothly, and it really brings out some engaging emotions that has me giddy for what comes next. Also, again, this episode had some fantastic visual directing and expression work. The two shots that I mentioned before, with Penny and Robin being excellent examples, and another two being the use of wide shots representing the initial divide in viewpoints between Ironwood and Oscar, and the short beat of silence after Yang says that she and Blake did what they had to do with Adam. Stuff like that often says a lot more than any words can, and that was certainly the case in this episode at multiple points, so big praise deserved there. In terms of any downsides, maybe some of the foreshadowing on Atlas potentially falling and the fate of Penny and Pietro is a bit too obvious, but that all depends on what actually happens and how it's presented. Also, again, while I get why we didn't see it, missing out on some of the action from the grim fighting in the opening scenes and some of the fun beforehand was a shame. And I feel like as well, the show might be overusing the end one episode with a grim attack, then start the next one with it being done a little bit too much. That being said, I got a lot of positives in this episode, and that continues with my episode awards, starting with the character of the episode, which I'm gonna give to James Ironwood. His actions and emotions were a key part of this episode's direction, as the general starts to take a turn for the concerning. But the episode did a stellar job at keeping some of his compelling nature still intact, with the heartfelt scene in the vault and Jason Rose's top quality voice work. As for the scene of the episode, that one goes to Nora's tirade. I've long adored Nora for her ability to not only be the comedic relief, but also be this passionate young girl with a strong heart, and seeing her stand her ground with such a passionate and understandable outburst was super satisfying, knowing that there's always been this strong-willed person beyond all the boobs and silly antics, which also ties into why Samantha Island rightfully deserves the voice acting gold star, as she perfectly portrayed such raw emotion while still remaining true to the character, avoiding this rare outburst from sounding unnatural. So, in the end, another chapter down and another strong entry in the volume is gained. While there were some aspects that I wish were there just for some extra fan enjoyment and maybe a bit more fleshing out of things, what we got was a chapter rich in thoughtful emotions, strong dialogue, and effective new quirks to several relationships and character arcs. Ironwood is becoming more and more complex a character, some of the other cast got a chance to make their own marks in entertaining ways, and some of the new insights, while a tad clear cut, adds further suspense to the remaining chapters, especially the next entry. For an episode packed to the brim with a ton of chatting and dialogue, it's quite the achievement that I never felt bored or lost on what's being discussed. Rather, I was hooked to every moment, and I pray that more episodes are able to handle such wordy stuff like this in the future. As we head into the next episode before the break, there's a lot of tension and emotion in the air, but so far the volume has continued to hit a strong quality throughout, and this chapter has helped maintain that form heading into what should be quite the Christmas cracker. But it's time to make sure that you guys tell me your thoughts on this episode. What's your stance on Ironwood's actions? Did you agree with Blake and Yang's decisions? And what do you think could be this volume's Christmas cliffhanger? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe and bell buttons and tick the notification box to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop. And follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for more on anything to do with future RWBY content, updates on the channel, and more. But until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.